Captain Lehana's boots echoed against the polished floor as she walked through the endless corridors of the Galactic Trade Tribunal. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. And she could hear whispers, in dozens of alien languages bouncing off the surfaces. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She had been to many alien worlds in her tenures as a freight captain. But nothing compared to Zendar Prime. This was where the most powerful beings in the galaxy decided who lived and who died in the world of interstellar trade. The air itself felt heavy with authority and ancient power. Captain Lee called out a voice behind her. She turned to see Kindeho, her first officer and closest friend, jogging to catch up. His face was pale with worry. The legal team just sent word. The Corvani Consortium has added 3 more charges. They're claiming we violated shipping protocols in the Vega sector. Hannah's stomach dropped. That's impossible. We've never even been to Vega. I know that, and you know that. But they have documents. Fake ones. But they look real enough to fool the tribunal. They reached the massive doors to the main chamber, each one standing 30 feet tall and covered in symbols from every known civilization. Two alien guards flanked the entrance. One looked like a walking tree with glowing amber eyes. The other resembled a giant mantis wearing ceremonial armor. Remember, Deho whispered, no matter what happens in there, keep your temper. These beings have been round for thousands of years. They see humans as children playing with toys. The doors opened with a sound like distant thunder, and Hannah stepped into the most intimidating room she had ever seen. The chamber was easily the size of a football stadium, with a domed ceiling that showed the swirling stars of the galaxy above. Hundreds of seats rose in circular tiers, filled with creatures that seemed to have crawled out of nightmares and dreams. A light dot at the center sat the 9-member tribunal, each one representing a different alien species. Magistrate Veldok dominated the middle position, a massive being that looked like a cross between an octopus and a dragon, with 6 glowing eyes that missed nothing. His skin was the color of old leather, and when he moved, the air around him shimmered with some kind of energy field. State your name and business, commanded the court clerk, a floating jellyfish-like creature with a voice like grinding metal. Captain Lehana of Phoenix Freight, she replied, her voice barely carrying in the vast space. I'm here to contest the charges brought against my company by the Corvani Consortium. A ripple of what sounded like laughter ran through the assembled crowd. To her left, she spotted the Corvani delegation, tall, elegant beings with silver skin and eyes like black holes. Their leader, Trademaster Zokai, smiled at her with too many teeth. Your Honor. Hannah began, stepping forward to the speaker's podium. My shipping company has operated within all galactic trade laws for over a decade. We've never had a single violation, never missed a delivery, and never broken a contract. These accusations are silence. The word hit her like a physical blow. Magistrate Veldok's 6 eyes blazed with contempt as he leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the entire chamber. You humans think you can waltz into our ancient trade networks and compete with civilizations that have been merchants for millennia? The other tribunal members began making sounds that might have been laughter if they had come from human throats. The scaled member from the Reptilian Confederacy hissed and clicked, while the crystalline being from the Silicon Collective chimed like broken bells. Even the floating gas cloud representative from the Nebula territories pulsed with what looked like amusement. We have documented evidence, Hannah said, her voice growing stronger despite her fear, that Phoenix Freight has saved the galactic shipping industry over 40 million credits through efficient routing and fair pricing. Our human crews work harder than human crews, spat Veldok, primitive mammals who barely learned to walk upright yesterday. In galactic terms, you speak of efficiency. Your species has been in space for less than a century. We have trading records that predate your entire civilization. The chamber erupted in alien sounds, clicking, buzzing, hissing, and warbling that echoed off the crystal walls like a symphony of mockery. Hannah felt her cheeks burn with shame and anger. But she forced herself to stay calm. Your Honor, if you would just look at our shipping records. We have looked, interrupted Tribune Quesada, a spider-like being with 8 arms and venom dripping from her fangs. The Corvonic Consortium has provided us with extensive documentation of your violations, illegal price manipulation, unauthorized route changes, and worst of all, the use of primitive human tactics to undercut established businesses. Hannah's hands trembled as she watched the massive holographic display above the chamber light up with her shipping permits. One by one, they began flushing red and disappearing. Each vanishing permit represented years of work, thousands of jobs, and the dreams of everyone who had trusted her to build something better. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking as tears began to stream down her face. This company employs 300 beings across 12 worlds. Humans, Altarians, Centauri, even some Corvani who believed in what we were building. You're not just destroying me, you're destroying innocent lives. But the tribunal only laughed. Harder, their alien sounds mixed together into a cacophony of cruelty that made Hannah's heart break. She had spent her entire adult life trying to prove that humans belonged among the stars, that they could contribute something valuable to galactic civilization behind her. She could hear Deho's sharp intake of breath as more permits vanished. From the display, Phoenix Freight was dying before their eyes, killed by beings who saw humans as nothing more than upstart primitives who needed to be put in their place. What none of them knew was that underneath her ceremonial court outfit, Hannah wore a small device that her father had given her years ago. When she pressed it 3 minutes earlier, it had sent a priority distress signal across the galaxy, coded with frequencies that only one organization would recognize. The signal was already racing through hyperspace at faster than light speed, carrying a message that would change everything. But for now, all Hannah could do was stand there and watch her life's work crumble while alien beings laughed at human tears. The hunt was about to begin. And the hunters had no idea they were about to become the hunted. The sound started as a low rumble, like distant thunder rolling across the crystal dome above the tribunal chamber. At first, the alien beings barely noticed it over their own laughter and chattering. But then the rumble grew stronger, deeper, until it shook the very foundations of the ancient courthouse. Captain Lehanna felt it first in her bones, a vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The tears on her cheeks were still wet, but something inside her chest began to flutter with hope. She knew that sound. She had heard it only once before, 15 years ago, when her father's fleet had come to rescue her from the burning colony in Kepler-for her to dot the massive doors to the chamber, each one weighing several tons and decorated with the sacred symbols of 9 different alien civilizations, suddenly exploded inward with a crash that shook dust from the crystal ceiling. The sound was so loud that several of the smaller alien beings fell from their seats, their sensitive hearing organs overwhelmed by the blast. Emergency klaxons immediately began wailing throughout the courthouse complex. Red warning lights flashed in patterns that meant extreme danger in 17 different alien languages. The gravitational sensors built into Zendara Prime's defense grid had detected something massive approaching the planet. Something that shouldn't exist according to their databases. What in the name of the Ancient Ones is happening? Shrieked Tribune Quesada, her 8 spider-like legs scrambling to keep her balance as the chamber continued to shake. Through the transparent dome above them, every being in the chamber could see Zendara's purple sky beginning to darken. The planet's twin suns seemed to dim as something enormous passed between them and the surface. Then they saw it, a sleek wedge-shaped vessel descending through the atmosphere like a knife cutting through. O Silk, the ship was unlike anything in the Tribunal's extensive registry of known spacecraft. Its hull gleamed with an almost organic smoothness, as if it had been grown rather than built. Energy crackled along its edges like controlled lightning, and the very air around it seemed to bend and twist with some kind of advanced technology that made the watching aliens nervous. "By the seven moons," whispered Magistrate Velthok, his 6 eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "What kind of vessel is that?" The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the largest Corvani battle cruiser, but it moved with the grace of a dancer, settling into a hover position directly above the courthouse dome. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, pulsing in rhythm with what looked like a heartbeat. Scanning, scanning, chattered the court's computer system in its mechanical voice. "Warning, unknown vessel configuration, energy readings off the scale. Recommend immediate evacuation." But before anyone could move, the ship's belly opened like a flower blooming in reverse. A beam of pure white light shot down, and 6 figures materialized in the center of the chamber. The alien beings gasped and recoiled as the light faded, revealing something that made their blood run cold. Heavy footsteps echoed through the now sullen chamber as the figure stepped forward. They were humans, but not like any humans the aliens had seen before. These were soldiers, warriors whose very presence seemed to change the air pressure in the room. Their leader was a woman in a pristine white and gold uniform that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe style that framed a face carved from stone. Her eyes were the color of deep space, and when she looked at the tribunal, several of the alien beings actually flinched. Behind her marched 6 soldiers in powered armor that hummed with barely contained energy. Their faceplates were down, hiding their features, but their movements were precise and deadly. Each one carried weapons that the aliens couldn't identify, devices that seemed to bend light round there. What is the meaning of this interruption?" Magistrate Velthok demanded, but his voice cracked with uncertainty. For the first time in his 300-year career, he felt genuinely afraid. The woman in the white uniform stopped exactly 10 feet from the tribunal's podium. When she spoke, her voice carried easily through the chamber without any amplification, cutting through the wailing claxons like a blade through paper. "I am Admiral Park Jina of the Terran Federation Navy," she announced, her words precise and deadly calm. "I'm here regarding the illegal persecution of Captain Lehana." The aliens exchanged nervous glances. Earth's military had never involved itself in trade disputes before. They barely involved themselves in anything beyond their own solar system. What had changed? "This is a civilian matter," Velthok sputtered, trying to regain his composure. "The military has no jurisdiction here. This tribunal operates under the authority of the Galactic Trade Commission, and that's where you're wrong, Magistrate," Admiral Park interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only the cold calculation of a predator who had found her prey. "Captain Lehana isn't just any trader." The chamber held its breath. Even the emergency klaxons seemed to quiet, as if waiting for her next words. "She's the daughter of General Lee Minho," Park continued, her eyes never leaving Velthok's face. "The liberator of Kepler 442, the man who saved 3 entire civilizations from extinction. The human who gave his life so that your people could continue to exist." The chamber fell deadly silent. The name hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Even the youngest beings in the room knew the stories of the siege of Kepler 442, how the mechanical harvesters had swept through 3 solar systems, devouring everything in their path. until one human fleet had stood against them. Captain Lehana stared at Admiral Park in shock. She had changed her name years ago, desperate to escape the shadow of her father's legend. She wanted to succeed on her own merits, not because of who her father had been. But now, watching the fear creep into the alien's eyes, she realized that some shadows were meant to protect, not hide. Impossible, whispered Counselor Medat, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. The Liberator's family died in the final battle. Everyone knows this. Admiral Park's smile grew colder. Reports of her death were greatly exaggerated. Captain Hannah survived the attack on Colony 7 and chose to honor her father's memory through peaceful commerce rather than warfare. She's been building bridges between species while you've been tearing them down. The soldiers behind Park shifted slightly, their armor humming with increased power. The message was clear. They weren't just here to talk. But that changes nothing, Velthok said, though his voice lacked conviction. Even if she is the Liberator's daughter, she still stands accused of what? Park's voice cut through his words like a laser. Of being too successful, of treating alien workers with respect, of charging fair prices instead of the inflated rates your Corvani friends prefer. Above them, the massive ship pulsed with energy, its hull now glowing so brightly that it lit up the entire chamber. More ships were appearing on the horizon, sleek vessels that moved with the deadly grace of hunting wolves. The hunt had begun, and the hunters were about to discover they had made a terrible mistake. The silence in the chamber was so complete that Captain Lehana could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Every alien eye was fixed on Admiral Park, waiting for her next words. The name Liberator hung in the air like a sacred whisper, carrying the weight of legends and nightmares. Impossible, whispered Counselor Zeftai, one of the tribunal's senior members. His voice shook as he spoke, and his tentacles coiled nervously round his ceremonial staff. The Liberator's daughter was reported killed in the frontier wars. The entire human colony was destroyed. We saw the wreckage ourselves. Admiral Park's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her dark eyes. She raised her hand, and a device on her wrist began to glow with soft blue light. Reports of her death were exaggerated. The air in the center of the chamber suddenly shimmered, and a massive holographic display materialized above everyone's heads. The image was so clear and detailed that several aliens ducked, thinking the projected starships might actually fall on them. This is classified military footage from the Battle of Kepler 442, Park announced, her voice carrying across the chamber like a death sentence. 15 years ago, the mechanical harvesters swept through 3 solar systems, devouring everything in their path. Entire civilizations turned to ash in a matter of days. The hologram showed the horror that had nearly ended galactic civilization. Massive robotic ships, each one the size of a moon, moved through space like hungry predators. Their hulls were black as the void between stars, and energy beams lanced out from them to strip planets bare of all life. The Altarian Republic fell first, Park continued, her voice emotionless as she narrated the galaxy's darkest hour. 12 billion souls consumed in less than a week. Then the Centauri Alliance collapsed. The Vegan Confederacy lasted only 3 days longer. The aliens in the chamber watched in horrified silence as the hologram showed their own worlds burning. Many of them had lost family members in those terrible days. Some had barely escaped with their lives. The Galactic Council was in full retreat. Hawk said, her eyes never leaving Magistrate Veldok's face. Your fleets were scattered, your home worlds evacuated. The harvesters were less than a day away from reaching the core systems when one man made a choice that changed everything. The hologram shifted to show a single human fleet. Dozens of ships that looked tiny compared to the mechanical monsters, bearing down on them. At the center of the formation was a massive battleship, its hull scarred from countless battles, but still gleaming with defiant pride. General Lee Minho, commanding the Terran Federation's Third Fleet, Park announced. 47 ships against an enemy that had already destroyed 3 entire civilizations. The odds were impossible, but he charged anyway. Hannah felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched her father's final battle play out above her head. She had been only 12 years old when it happened, hiding in a bunker on Colony 7 while her world burned round her. She had never seen the footage before. The military had classified it to protect the families of the fallen. The hologram showed the human fleet diving into the heart of the Harvester Formation like a spear. Thrust into the belly of a beast, laser. Cannons fired in endless streams. Missiles exploded like miniature stars, and ships on both sides vanished in brilliant flashes of light. For 6 hours, General Lee Minho's fleet held the line. Park continued, her voice growing thick with emotion. They gave the evacuating civilians time to escape, but the other fleet's time to regroup, and when his own ship was crippled and burning, when defeat was certain, he made the ultimate sacrifice. The hologram showed the human battleship, its hull cracked and venting atmosphere, accelerating toward the largest harvester ship. The 2 vessels collided in an explosion that lit up half the star system, and when the light faded, both ships were gone. The destruction of the Harvester command ship created a cascade failure in their network. Park explained. The remaining mechanical forces shut down, drifting helplessly through space. The galaxy was saved, but at a terrible cost. General Lee Minho and his entire fleet were lost. The chamber was silent except for the soft sounds of alien beings weeping. Even the proudest species in the galaxy had been humbled by the reminder of their darker star and the human who had saved them all. But his daughter survived. Park continued, turning to look at Hannah with something that might have been pride. Pulled from the wreckage of Colony 7 by rescue teams, she was listed as dead to protect her from those who might seek revenge against the Liberator's family. She grew up in secret, changing her name and building a new life among the stars. Hannah stared at the Admiral in shock. She had always wondered how she had escaped that burning world, how she had ended up on the transport ship that carried her to safety. Now she knew. Her father's sacrifice had saved more than just the galaxy. It had saved her too. Captain Hannah chose to honor her father's memory through peaceful commerce rather than warfare. Park said, her voice growing harder. She's spent 10 years building bridges between species, treating alien workers with respect, and proving that humans belong among the stars. And how have you repaid her father's sacrifice? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Several tribunal members looked away, unable to meet the Admiral's burning gaze. The Corvonic Consortium has been systematically targeting human merchants to eliminate competition. Park continued, activating another holographic display. They've bribed officials, falsified shipping records, and even resorted to piracy, all to maintain their stranglehold on galactic trade. The new hologram showed financial records, communication intercepts, and shipping manifests. The evidence was overwhelming, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of galactic government. You have no proof, Magistrate Veldok roared, but his voice lacked conviction. His 6 eyes darted nervously between the holographic evidence and the human soldiers standing behind Admiral Park. Don't I? Park's smile widened as she looked up at the transparent dome above them. Perhaps you should look outside. Every head in the chamber turned upward, and what they saw made their blood run cold. The purple sky above Zendara Prime was filled with ships, dozens of them, hanging in the atmosphere like silver daggers. They were sleek and deadly, their hulls gleaming with the same organic smoothness as Park's flagship. The Terran Federation Navy has been investigating the Corvonic Consortium for months, Park announced. her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "We have evidence of their crimes, recordings of their meetings, and testimony from their victims. The hunt is over. Magistrate, the only question now is whether you'll surrender peacefully or join them in prison." The chamber erupted in chaos as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. The daughter of the galaxy's greatest hero had been betrayed by the very beings her father had died to save. But now the humans had returned in force, and they were not in a forgiving mood. The reckoning had begun. 6 months had passed since the trial that shook the galaxy, and Captain Lehana still couldn't believe how much her life had changed. She stood on the observation deck of her flagship, the Minho's Pride, watching the controlled chaos of the busiest shipping hub in 3 sectors. The massive viewport stretched from floor to ceiling, giving her a perfect view of the incredible sight outside. Harmony Station floated in the void like a gleaming city of tomorrow. The massive space station was shaped like a giant flower, with 12 arms stretching out in all directions. Each arm was over a mile long and filled with docking bays, warehouses, and living quarters. The central hub pulsed with soft blue light, and ships of every shape and size moved round it like busy insects. "Look at that," Hannah whispered to herself, watching a convoy of Alterian bioships dock alongside a formation of human cargo vessels. Their organic hulls seemed to ripple and breathe as they settled into their berths. 6 months ago, most of these species wouldn't even talk to each other. The station had been built with reparations from the dismantled Corvani Consortium. When the corruption trial ended, their vast wealth had been seized and distributed among the traders they had wronged. But instead of just taking the money, Hannah had convinced the other victims to pool their resources and build something better, a neutral trading post where all species could meet as equals. "Your father would be proud," said a familiar voice. Behind her, Hannah turned to see Admiral Park Jin entering the observation deck. The Admiral looked more relaxed than she had during the trial, her pristine uniform replaced by casual civilian clothes. But her eyes still held that sharp intelligence that had cut through the tribunal's lies like a laser. "I keep thinking about what he would say if he could see this," Hannah replied, gesturing toward the viewport. "All these different species working together, sharing technology and resources. It's what he always dreamed of, through the transparent aluminum." They could see the station's main trading floor, a massive open area where beings from dozens of worlds haggled over prices and shipping routes. Humans worked alongside tall, graceful Alterians with their arms and luminescent skin. Centauri traders with their crystalline bodies chimed like bells as they negotiated with squat free vegan merchants. Even some former Corvani employees had found new jobs here, their silver skin gleaming under the station's artificial lights. "I spent so many years trying to escape his shadow," Hannah continued, her eyes bright with ancient tears. "I changed my name, moved to the frontier, built my company from nothing. I thought I was being independent, but I was really just running away from who I was supposed to be." Admiral Park nodded, understanding in her dark eyes. "The shadow of a great person can feel overwhelming. But you've learned something important. That shadow wasn't meant to imprison you. It was meant to shelter you until you were strong enough to cast your own light." The trial had been swift and decisive, broadcast live across the galaxy. The evidence against the Corvani Consortium was overwhelming, hundreds of documents proving their corruption, bribery, and systematic targeting of human traders. Magistrate Velthok and his corrupt tribunal members were sentenced to prison terms that would last longer than most species' lives. Pans. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was here, in this station, where the dream of true galactic cooperation was finally becoming reality. "Phoenix Freight now has contracts with every major shipping lane in the galaxy," Park said, pulling up a holographic display that showed trade routes crisscrossing the stars like a web of light. "You've gone from a small operation to the largest independent shipping company in 3 sectors. Your father saved the galaxy from destruction, and you're teaching it how to prosper." Hannah smiled, watching a massive human freighter drift past the viewport. The ship was over half a mile long, its hull gleaming with fresh paint and the Phoenix Freight logo, a stylized bird rising from flames. But what made her proud wasn't the size of the ship or the company logo. It was the crew. Through the freighter's windows, she could see humans working alongside Alterians, Centauri, and even some of the insectoid hive mind species. The cargo hold was being loaded by teams of mixed species, each one bringing their unique strengths to the job. Humans provided determination and creativity. Alterians brought their front efficiency. Centauri offered their perfect mathematical precision. And the hive mind workers could coordinate dozens of tasks simultaneously. The irony isn't lost on me, Hannah said with a laugh that held no bitterness. They tried to destroy me for being human, never knowing that my humanity, my father's legacy, was exactly what would save me. They saw human traits as weaknesses, but those same traits are what brought all these species together. A soft chime echoed through the observation deck, and Hannah's first officer, Kim Dae-ho, appeared on the communication screen. His face was grinning with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this," he said, his voice crackling with energy. "The Andromedan Trade Guild just sent a message. They want to establish diplomatic relations with the Human-Alien Merchant Alliance. They're offering to open the entire Andromeda Galaxy to our shipping routes." Hannah's eyes went wide. The Andromeda Galaxy was over 2 million light-years away, home to civilizations so advanced that they were considered myths by most species. If the Alliance could establish trade routes there, it would revolutionize galactic commerce. That's not all. Dae-ho continued. The Temporal Merchants Union from the future timeline just made contact. They want to discuss trade agreements across multiple realities. "Captain, we're not just changing our galaxy anymore. We're changing the entire universe." Admiral Park whistled softly. "Your father saved 3 civilizations. You're about to unite thousands of them across space and time." Through the viewport, more ships were arriving every minute. Some were familiar designs, the sleek vessels of the Solar Federation, the organic curves of the Alterian bioships, the geometric perfection of Centauri craft. But others were completely alien. Their hulls made of materials that seemed to bend light itself. "What's next?" Park asked, though she already knew the answer from the determined look in Hannah's eyes. Hannah's smile widened as she watched a brand new human freighter dock at the station. Its hull bore the Phoenix Freight logo, but this ship was different. It was a hybrid design, built using technology from a dozen different species. The crew was equally diverse: humans, Alterians, Centauri, vegans, and species that hadn't even been discovered 6 months ago. "We keep building bridges," she said, her voice filled with the same quiet determination that had once driven her father to charge into impossible odds. "One trade route at a time, one species at a time, one galaxy at a time." Outside the viewport, the stars seemed to pulse with new possibilities. The galaxy that had once been torn apart by war and corruption was now united by trade and mutual respect. Humans had found their place among the stars not as conquerors, but as friends and partners. The dream of the Liberator lived on in his daughter's work. General Lee Minho had saved the galaxy with his sacrifice, but Captain Lihana was teaching it how to thrive. The legacy of humanity wasn't written in the flash of laser cannons or the roar of engines. It was written in the quiet moments when different species chose to trust each other, to work together, to build something better than any of them could create alone. As the Minho's Pride prepared to depart for its next mission, a diplomatic trade voyage to the Andromeda Galaxy, Hannah whispered a silent thank you to the father she had never really known. And his shadow had protected her, his sacrifice had saved her, and his legacy would guide her to the stars. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was finally ready to explore it all. The end.